wants to pretend that I stalked Natalie Bollinger to Virginia, and Alicia Bollinger wants to pretend that I stalked them to Virginia. The fact is that the evidence from both Natalie and Alicia, as well as from people like Maddie Boa, show that we absolutely did plan the trip together. Wasn't no stalking thing. It was a situation where a couple of drug addicts didn't want people to know the truth about them. And thus, the gaslighting. The, oh, he's mentally ill, don't listen to him. Well, the first thing I start doing when someone says don't listen is start listening. Go ahead. This trooper just drove by. Oh, my God, my back is killing me. Anyway, I'm taking my happy posterior up to one of the local stores to get some toilet paper. Not that any of y'all care. So, now that we've established that, like most of this evidence, I keep producing it, calling me a liar only works so long. Telling people not to take a look only works so long. Eventually, someone's going to wisen up to what you're doing, and they're going to take a look. And then they're going to get wisened up even more. That's one thing about looking at actual evidence instead of making assumptions and passing judgment. So let's get to the Bible. This is a disgusting book, actually. It's my favorite book. Out of every fiction book ever written, it is my favorite. I've read every English version of the Bible I can get my hands on, but not for the purposes that you might think. I'm not some Jesus nut. My entire life, I've gotten to see and hear Christians use the Bible to excuse the most horrendous crimes on the planet. And then, of course, we use words like, well, fidelis, faithful. Kind of like the name Fido. That's a variant of the word fidelis. You might recognize that from the word fidelity. That would be, in modern terminology and modern representation of the word, fidelity is whether or not your wife is screwing around on you, or whether or not you're screwing around on your wife. Fidelis, faithful. Fidelity. When you say infidel and you want to assign it to Muslims, well, that's horrible. We haven't even gotten to the book of Judas yet. When it comes to Christianity, Christians have killed more Christians than all other groups. All other religious groups combined have killed less Christians than the Christian community itself. So let's look at the religion that it originally came from, Judaism. So Judaism originally was just 5 books. 5. Well, they added quite a few since then. And of course, eventually it got to the day that Jesus was around. And of course, when Jesus was around, the Bible was a lot different too, because at the time, it wasn't the Bible. It was the Torah. So, what do you really need to know about the Torah? Well, the first 5 books are supposedly written by Moses, and supposedly some of it is written by Aaron. It depends on who you ask. This is stuff that religious scholars argue over. Instead of right and wrong as far as morality goes, they want to argue over who's right or wrong about what in the Bible should be taken literally and what in the Bible should be taken figuratively. But, like I said, it's a work of fiction. Then let's get to John the Apostle, who supposedly died on Cyprus when he was 80 in prison. And, well, we can't actually prove otherwise, because unlike Jesus, who was actually written about by the Romans in his lifetime, well, Jesus didn't go running around claiming that he was the one and only Son of the Almighty. Jesus called himself the Son of Man through the whole book. There's a few small portions where, well, it's still fiction. And it's fiction that's written in several different ways. Now, the original texts that went into the Bible, when we started finding the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were not all found around the Dead Sea, by the way. Shepherd got his foot stuck in a hole and there was some clay pots inside of it. Now, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was 2 scrolls in specific that confused the shit out of everybody. One of these was a copper scroll. And when they tested the alloy composition, because no copper is going to be completely pure, they found that the purity of it could only be found in Egypt, and that the chemical composition and makeup came from Egypt. So that very first Dead Sea Scroll, Book of Judas, was the oldest. They claim that it was possibly or probably made around the time of the siege of Masada, which means that it's the only scroll that could have been written by somebody who was alive in Jesus' lifetime. Out of all of the books of the Bible, we've never found one as old as the first Book of Judas. Now, the Book of Judas also paints an entirely different story. It makes a lot of sense out of a book that actually makes no fucking sense. Now, am I reading this book because I'm some religious nut who wants to know everything about the Jesus? Well, hell no. I don't give a holy fucking goddamn at this point. What I give a fucking goddamn about is the goddamn Christians fucking killing people and making the excuse of, oh, you can't judge me, only God can judge me. Passing judgment on everyone that they know. You have no idea how difficult it is to walk into a Christian household without having to hear about everybody else's business in town, followed by a few praise Jesus's, praise the Lord's, and oh Lord, please get this demon and negativity out of me. It ain't a demon. You're just a selfish person. You use the Bible to excuse your shitty behaviors. Either you want to blame the devil or you want to play or blaming Jesus himself. Jesus don't make your decisions for you. Also, since no 2 religious scholars can agree on the color of shit in the Bible, I'm really not going to listen to them debate any other portion of the Bible either. I don't fucking care. I know my favorite version of the Bible is the King James Version, and the reason that it's my favorite isn't because of the these, thys, those, and thous, although those do make me feel slightly more intelligent reading it, especially aloud because it confuses the shit out of people. I like the King James Version because it's the first version I ever read, first of all, and second of all because it's got goddamn unicorns in it. Well, that makes the story a whole hell of a lot more interesting, don't it? So then we ended up with, in 1978, Now, I don't know if it was dug up in 1978 or identified in 1978, but in 1978 we found the first Dead Sea Scroll. The reason it's considered the first book of Judas, the reason it's considered the first one is because the one that was found with the Dead Sea Scrolls was one of the first ones that they unwrapped to find out what was inside of the packages. That's right, they survived because they were wrapped in packaging. So we don't actually have the Dead Sea Scroll itself. It's the Book of Judas. What we have is the wrapping it came in. It's kind of like it's Christmas, and you open up your present to see what's inside, and it's pretty cool. And then you let a preacher borrow it long enough to go get some batteries, and he disappears with it. So that's what happened to the first Dead Sea Scroll. As a result, it's basically a myth, and it's considered the third Dead Sea Scroll. It was also written in a very specific type of boxy Hebrew. The other two, one of them was found in Egypt, and one of them was found in the Sinai. That's a peninsula between Egypt and Israel. So they were several hundred miles apart. Somebody's typing at me. I'm sorry for being rude. I'm not trying to ignore you. I just figure if I'm taking a walk, I ought to ramble a bit. I have to record for my safety anyway. So I guess I'll go through these before I continue. Someone calling himself Cast Blast type. Attention viewers, please adhere to our strict edging. Lovely. Yeah, hilarious. All right, so see, this person wrote, would you take the opportunity if I offered it to move to India with me into a house? And no, I wouldn't. Yeah, trolls. Got someone calling themselves One Unknown One. Type Free Palestine. Someone calling themselves Dylan typed, are you Satan? And someone else typed, Free Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. I'd certainly hope you're not an American saying that stuff. I really do. One of the things about living in the United States is I have no national pride whatsoever. None. I don't care what country you were born in. I care how you treat other human beings. Now, as far as the name calling goes, you can call me Satan all you want. I find that far less offensive than somebody calling me Jesus, that's for certain. Not much for blaspheming. Just kidding. I can give two shits less. You call yourself whatever you want. Now let's get back to the Dead Sea Scrolls. So these other two Dead Sea Scrolls, one of them found in Egypt and one of them found in the Sinai, are both written in a very specific type of Egyptian that was started after Alexander the Great's men took over Egypt. And it was based highly and heavily on Greek letters. So if you notice that there's some sort of funky Greek letter looking alphabet, but it doesn't say anything in Greek, it might actually be Ptolemaic Egyptian. Very cool, huh? It's also odd because, as far as we know, in all those generations of Ptolemies who were in possession of Egypt, Cleopatra VIII was the only one who spoke native English, native Egyptian. Now there's Cleopatra's all the way up to Cleopatra the 13th. Cleopatra the 13th was famous for a while. These are supposed descendants, and of course, they're mythology. Much like a lot of the arguments that we're getting today about where John died, whether it was on Cyprus or some other island. What we know is that people afterwards wrote their versions of what they think happened. But even today, with modern technology and being able to see things with your own two eyes right in front of you, being able to instantly replay an incident that happened years ago, and you can replay it and see what really happened. We're able to do that today, and we still get stuff wrong. Let's talk about Judas Iscariot. Judas is the glue who puts the whole story together. Not the whole Bible, just the New Testament. Because for starters, he addresses Jesus and his disciples as exactly what they are. Rabbi. It means teacher. Those of you who read in the Bible that the apostles called Jesus teacher. Yeah, that's what rabbi means. It means teacher. And much like the way the Muslims did their stuff back in the day, your first years of life, you didn't have any textbook except for the Torah. And the Muslims, for the first 9 years of life, for many of them, the only book you were allowed to touch was the Quran. Quran has a few famous people in it. They're not in the Bible, or at least not in the way they are in the Quran. For example, Jesus' mother, Mary. She is mentioned in the Bible, but she has an entire book named after her in the Quran. Also, it was not Mary to begin with, it was Miriam. There's several variants of that name. It's one of those ones that passed down to us through multiple generations. So we got a lot of religious stuff that's all tied into each other, right? 3 major religions arguing over stupid shit. Meanwhile, as far as the infidel thing goes, that supposedly anyone who's not a Muslim is an infidel. Well, no. You get a lot of religious zealots that push, well, the worst of what they have as a community to show. Christians don't want to acknowledge all of the wonderful things that many Muslims have contributed. It's easier to just paint all Muslims as bad people, and vice versa. Now, of course, Judas's story in the Bible versus what the scrolls say, we're also talking about centuries between one and the other. Centuries between when the Dead Sea Scrolls and, well, all the scrolls involved in that are actually considered Dead Sea Scrolls, even though there's many of them that were not found around the Dead Sea. Now, Judas's story is that Jesus came to him and told him what he wanted Judas to do, and just didn't want to. Judas had no interest. But Jesus talked him into it. He was a powerful persuader. So, although we've only got 2 versions of that book, and we don't know if they're the same, we get an argument over whether the first and second book of Judas are the same book. I don't mean like literally the same book, as in came out of the same hole. I mean, as in there's several centuries, at least 2 to 3 centuries in between both of those versions. So terminology might have changed. Sentence structure might have changed. And we know that they had a slightly boxier style later on. Now, the reason I'm going into all this religious stuff, despite the fact that I'm not a religious feller, is because the most unchristlike things that I've ever seen people do, that I've ever been witness to, came from people who profess to be Christians. And the most Christ-like people that I've ever met are all atheists, every single one of them. As far as Palestine goes, Palestine was given their own nation several times by Israel, including after Israel kicked the living shit out of Egypt. Now, there's a reason that all of the surrounding nations refused to allow Palestinians into their country. Even the Muslim nations, talking about freeing Palestine, aren't interested in Palestinians in their country. The reason for that is because the Palestinian people are heavily divided, highly divided, and a bunch of religious friggin' zealots. So, after several wars and Palestinians hopping borders and being given refugee camps, they started destroying the infrastructures of the Muslim nations who took them in. Regardless of whether you believe Jesus was the Son of God or not, well, we do have documentation that he did actually exist. Documentation from the Romans. And just because Jesus existed doesn't mean that your God exists. And since no two of you agree on which Jesus is the real Jesus, I think I'm going to stick with analyzing and paying attention to my surroundings and making observations via the scientific method.